He was a cold billionaire CEO. She was the secretary who remembered with her heart. And what came next? No one was ready to feel. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And when we finish, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. Elodie Carter was officially late. Not the 5 minutes, no one will notice kind of late. The 42 minutes, your career is over before it begins kind of late. She burst through the revolving doors of Val Enterprises like a clumsy pink hurricane. Her left heel making a strange squeak with every step, mentally adding to her list. Find out why shoe is squealing. Her purse slipping off her shoulder, and that horrible feeling that she had forgotten something important but couldn't remember what. The lobby was intimidating. Italian marble floors polished to a mirror shine, smoked glass walls, and that corporate silence that screams you don't belong here on every frequency possible. Miss Carter. The voice cracked through the air from the reception desk like a stylish whip. Elodie spun around so fast she almost twisted her ankle. The woman behind the counter looked to be in her 40s, her hair pulled into a bun so perfect it defied physics, red cat-eye glasses, and an expression that clearly said, "I don't have time for this, but it's my job, so here we go." Henderson. Elodie rushed toward her, nearly tripping over a decorative plant. "I can explain. The subway, and there was this lady with 3 dogs, and my alarm, well, I did set one, I swear, but—" "Breathe." Mrs. Henderson raised a hand, cutting off the stream of excuses. "First day of work, and you show up late?" Technically, Elodie started to argue, but the woman lifted one perfectly arched eyebrow, and the words died in her throat. "Mr. Vale just asked for coffee." Henderson was already moving, circling the counter with military precision. "He's waiting, and he doesn't like waiting." Elodie's stomach dropped like an elevator with a cut cable. "He, the CEO? Adrian Vale? The one who—" She made a vague hand gesture trying to express richest man in Manhattan, basically a walking urban legend, famous for not talking to anyone. "That one?" "Yes, Miss Carter, that one." Henderson handed her a silver tray, a white porcelain cup with steaming coffee, hot saucer, 2 perfectly placed Italian cookies, and a folded linen napkin. "I prepared it while you were running late. Consider this your corporate life jacket." "Thank you, I swear I'll—" 42nd floor. Henderson placed a black leather folder in Elodie's other hand. "Documents he requested this morning. You deliver both. Don't mix up the order. Coffee first, documents second. He has a system." "System. Got it. Coffee, documents, system." Elodie repeated like a mantra, trying to memorize it while juggling 3 different panic thoughts at once. She looked down at her left wrist. There was something written in blue pen, slightly smudged. 8:30, CEO coffee, 42nd floor. Henderson noticed her glance, and something in the woman's face softened. Just a fraction, but it was there. 42nd floor, Miss Carter. Go, now." "On it." Elodie turned like an awkward ballerina, tripped again on the same plant. How? Regained her balance, and practically sprinted to the elevators. Her left heel kept squeaking. Every step sounded like "You're a disaster. You're a disaster." She pressed the elevator button 7 times because once clearly wasn't enough. "Come on, come on, come on," she muttered to herself, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, balancing the tray and the folder like a circus juggler having a bad day. Ding! The brushed steel doors opened, and she stepped inside like a soldier walking into a war zone. The elevator was mirrored inside. She saw her reflection and almost groaned. Light brown hair, slightly messy, she'd run her fingers through it at least 15 times while running. Hot pink blazer screaming, "Hi, I have no idea how to dress for corporate environments," in neon. Makeup. Okay, that part was fine. Actually pretty good. The only thing working for her today. She checked her wrist again. The ink had smudged a bit from nervous sweat, but it still read 42nd floor. "Okay, Elodie, you can do this. Just go up, deliver the coffee, hand over the documents, don't spill anything, don't say anything embarrassing, don't trip, don't." Ding. 42nd floor. The doors opened to a hallway that looked straight out of an architectural magazine. White walls, dark wood floors, soft lighting, and that oppressive silence that says important people work here. At the end of the hallway stood a pair of solid wooden doors with a discreet golden plaque. Adrian Vale, CEO. Elodie took 3 deep breaths, a technique her therapist had taught her. Coffee documents system, coffee documents system, she whispered, starting to walk. Her heel kept squeaking. In the silence of the hallway, every step echoed like church bells announcing a wedding. She reached the door. Her hands were full, tray in the right hand, folder in the left, and the door still needed to be opened. Elodie looked at the golden handle as if it were some kind of cosmic riddle. All right, this is manageable. She turned around, tried using her elbow, didn't work. Tried her shoulder, the tray wobbled dangerously. Then, in a moment of questionable brilliance, she decided to use her hip. She pressed against the door, the handle gave way, and the door opened so fast she almost stumbled inside. Her arms flailed, the tray tilted, the coffee danced dangerously on the rim of the cup, the folder slipped, and Elodie made that sound that isn't quite a scream but not a sigh either, more of a you-beep, pure panic. Somehow, by the grace of some benevolent cosmic force, she managed to stay upright. The tray was crooked but intact, the coffee hadn't spilled, the folder was pressed against her chest like a medieval shield. Elodie exhaled the air she'd been holding. Okay, crisis averted, you're a professional, you did it. No one saw and… She looked up and froze, because Adrian Vale was there. Not sitting behind the huge glass desk at the back of the room, not distracted by the computer, not on the phone. No, he was standing, 3 meters away, looking directly at her, and for the first time in her life, Elodie understood the meaning of commanding presence. Adrian Vale wasn't just tall, he was blocks the light tall. Broad shoulders inside a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than 6 months of her rent. Jet black hair, perfectly combed back, revealing a face that looked like it had been designed by someone obsessed with symmetry. Sharp jawline, straight, dark eyebrows, and those eyes. Oh, wow, those eyes. Gray. But not ordinary gray. More like winter storm gray, the gray of old stone. The kind of gray that said, I've seen the whole world and remain unreadable. And they were fixed on her. Elodie opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Hi. That was all she managed to say. Brilliant, eloquent, Pulitzer-worthy corporate dialogue. He didn't answer. Of course he didn't. Because Adrian Vale was famous for not speaking. She had read about it last night and recorded it twice just in case. Board meetings where he only observed, and people somehow knew what he wanted. $1 million deals closed with a single nod. Body language so sharp it made words unnecessary. The silence stretched like a rubber band ready to snap. I brought your coffee. Elodie lifted the tray slightly, like an offering to an annoyed deity. And documents. Not in that order. I mean, yes, in that order. Coffee first, system. Mrs. Henderson explained the system. Nothing. He just watched her. It wasn't a hostile look, or kind, it was evaluating. As if she were a puzzle he was deciding whether or not to solve. Elodie took a step forward. The heels squeaked again. Sorry, my shoe's making this weird sound. I don't know why. Maybe it's a social commentary on my life. She laughed, that nervous, high-pitched laugh she hated in herself. Or no, probably just a defective shoe. Right? I'll stop talking now. Of course she didn't stop. Actually, I was late, which is awful since it's my first day, but there was this lady on the subway with 3 chihuahuas, and they were barking like an out-of-tune choir, and I missed my connection, and… She realized she was rambling and bit her lip. Sorry, I'm nervous. You're intimidating. In a professional way. I'm not saying you're scary, you're just imposing. That's the word, imposing. The corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile, not even close, more like a microscopic twitch, as if some facial muscle briefly considered the idea of expression and then gave up. But Elodie saw it. Okay, I'll just put this on your desk. She began walking carefully, like she was crossing a minefield. The office was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking all of Manhattan. Dark wood shelves with books arranged by color. Who even does that? A massive glass desk, so spotless it looked unused. Elodie placed the tray carefully on the surface. Coffee, saucer, cookies. Everything perfectly arranged. She let out a small breath of relief. There, coffee delivered without. She turned too quickly. The squeaky heels slipped. The left foot twisted. She stumbled sideways, arms spinning like windmill blades, and the leather folder, that precious one with the important documents, flew from her hands like a startled bird. Everything happened in slow motion and at full speed at the same time. Elodie saw the wooden floor coming closer, saw the folder spinning in the air, saw her entire career falling apart in real time, and then, a hand, firm, warm, catching her arm with surgical precision. Adrian had moved so fast she didn't even see it. One moment he was several feet away, the next he was there, holding her, stopping the fall, the other hand catching the folder midair with reflexes that defied logic. They froze like that. She was halfway bent at an impossible angle. He was holding her arm, their faces far too close for what was appropriate in a work environment. Elodie could feel the heat of his hand through the blazer's fabric. She noticed details she shouldn't, a small scar on his right eyebrow, the flawless texture of his skin, the way his jaw was clenched, and the scent. Oh, the scent. Something expensive, woody, sandalwood mixed with cedar, and something she couldn't name but that definitely cost more than her monthly salary. His eyes met hers, a storm meeting chaos, ice meeting pink fire. Then in a voice so low it was almost a whisper, rough like each word took effort, he said, "Careful," one word. But the way it came out, it was like breaking a curse in a fairy tale, like the first crack in a marble statue, like something rare and precious and absolutely unexpected. Elodie's eyes widened so much she felt her lashes brush her eyebrows. You talk." The words left her lips in a breath of pure disbelief. Something crossed his face, too quick to read. Maybe? Embarrassment? Vulnerability? His jaw tightened even more. He helped her stand, released her arm as if it burned, stepped back and handed her the folder. Elodie took it automatically, still processing. He didn't say another word. Just turned, walked to the huge window, hands in pockets, looking out over Manhattan. Conversation over. Dismissed. But something in Elodie's chest was racing like an out-of-control train. I should go then. She stepped back toward the door, clutching the folder to her chest. Thank you for not letting me fall. And catching the folder. And breathe, Elodie. Have a good day, Mr. Vale. She left the room faster than she should have, closed the door gently, and stood in the empty hallway, leaning against the wood, heart pounding way too fast. Adrian Vale had spoken. To her. One word, but it had been his. Elodie looked down at her left wrist. The ink was smudged now. She could barely read 8:30. She grabbed a blue pen from her bag and wrote on her right hand, shaky letters. He talks. I heard him. That night, in the tiny Brooklyn apartment she shared with a roommate who worked night shifts and was rarely home, Elodie sat on her bed surrounded by organized chaos. Colorful post-its covered the wall above her headboard like a rainbow of reminders. Yellow for work, pink for personal, blue for important, green for urgent. Her nightstand held 3 sacred items: a worn black hardcover notebook, a lighter-sized digital recorder, and a phone with alarms set for every key hour of the day. She picked up the recorder with hands still slightly trembling, pressed rec. The red light blinked. Day 1. Vale Enterprises. Her voice sounded tired but carried something new, something hopeful. I was late. Disastrous first impression. Almost ruined important documents. Almost fell flat on my face. She paused, smiling to herself like a fool. But Adrian Vale, the name came out soft, almost reverent. He caught me. And he, a small incredulous laugh, he talked to me. Another pause. Careful. That's what he said. One word. But the way it sounded, like she searched for the right words, like breaking a spell, like something precious and rare. She turned off the recorder and added a new blue post-it to the wall. Don't forget, Adrian Vale talks. And today, he talked to me. Elodie lay down, pulled the thin blanket up to her chin, and for the first time in months felt something different in her chest. Not just hope, certainty. Something had started today. Something her heart would remember, even if her memory tried to forget. And as Manhattan sparkled outside her tiny window, Elodie Carter closed her eyes and smiled. Because tomorrow she would remember. The next morning, Elodie learned that remembering and surviving were 2 completely different things. She had woken up at 6:15. Alarm blasting Eye of the Tiger, because subtlety was not her strong suit. Reviewed the recordings from the night before while brushing her teeth and arrived at the office 12 minutes early. Progress, until Mrs. Henderson handed her 2 piles of documents. Quarterly financial reports. Henderson tapped the pile on the left. For Mr. Castellanos, Vice President of Operations, Conference Room B, 10th floor, 9:30 a.m. Then she tapped the pile on the right. Merger contracts for Pacifica Industries. Mr. Vale needs to review them before his call with the lawyers at 10. Leave them on his desk. Elodie looked at both piles, identical in size, both in beige manila folders, both urgent. Got it? Left pile for Castellanos, right for the boss, she repeated like a mantra, already planning to stick a post-it note to remind herself. Exactly. Henderson adjusted her cat-eye glasses. And Miss Carter, don't mix them up. I won't. Elodie smiled with confidence she definitely didn't feel. 30 minutes later, she was having a nervous breakdown in front of the printer, because of course the financial reports were missing a page. Of course she had to reprint it. And of course the printer chose that exact moment to declare war. Come on, work with me. Elodie pressed every button available like a desperate pianist. We're a team, partners, friends. The printer beeped in what sounded suspiciously like a sarcastic laugh and froze completely. You're kidding me. Elodie stared at the screen, flashing paper jam in accusing red letters. I literally just put in new paper. She opened the front drawer, closed it, opened the side panel, closed it, opened a compartment she didn't even know existed, and found someone's blue pen? How? Okay. Therapy didn't cover printer trauma, but fine. She took a deep breath and started pulling out crumpled pages from the machine's insides. That's when she heard a voice behind her. Usually, it works better if you turn it off first. Elodie jumped like a startled cat, hitting her head on the open printer lid. Ow! She turned around, rubbing the top of her head, and froze. Adrian Valley was there, 2 meters away, holding a cup of coffee, watching her like someone observing a rare, clumsy bird species. Mr. Vale. Elodie straightened up way too fast and tripped over her own bag on the floor. She regained balance by grabbing the desk. Hi, good morning. For the 4th time today, technically, if we count when I passed you in the hallway and waved like a normal person would. He said nothing, just looked at the printer, then at her, then at the wrinkled papers in her hand that looked like they'd lost a war. Silence stretched. The printer hates me. Elodie filled the void because she couldn't help herself. I know it sounds crazy, but I swear it's self-aware and chose to challenge me. The corner of his mouth twitched, that micro-expression she'd seen yesterday and was already beginning to recognize as Adrian Vale trying not to laugh. He stepped closer, set his coffee on the desk, and simply pressed the power button on the printer. Waited 3 seconds, turned it back on. The machine came to life with a soft hum and started printing perfectly. Elodie looked at the printer, then at him, then back at the printer. How? Is that magic? He picked up his cup again and, without looking directly at her, murmured so quietly it was almost a thought spoken aloud. Patience. And left. Just left. Leaving Elodie standing there, holding crumpled papers and staring at a printer that now worked perfectly, like nothing had ever happened. Patience, she repeated to the empty air, counting mentally. Care yesterday, patience today. That's, 7 words in 2 days? 8? She shook her head. Whatever it is, it has to mean something. The printer finished its job. Elodie took the new page, slid it into the correct folder, left Castellanos, financial. She checked 3 times, grabbed both piles, and ran out. 10th floor first, meeting at 9:30. She had 6 minutes. The elevator was taking forever. Come on. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, holding both folders tightly against her chest. Ding. Doors opened. She stepped in, pressed 10. The doors began to close and a hand appeared, stopping them. Adrian stepped in, of course, because the universe had a cruel sense of humor. They stood there in the small elevator space, she in one corner holding the folders, he on the other side with a presence that somehow took up all available oxygen. Silence. Elodie watched the numbers light up. 38, 39, 40. So, she started because silence was physically painful. Thank you, for the printer. You kind of saved my morning. He didn't reply. Just gave that microscopic nod that could mean you're welcome or please stop talking. 35, 36, 37. I've never been good with technology. Elodie kept talking, her mouth moving on its own. Once, I managed to freeze my grandmother's microwave. I don't even know how that's possible, but I did it. She had to call a technician. It was embarrassing. The corner of his mouth twitched again. 30, 29, 28. And then there's my phone, which keeps falling in impossible places. Last week it fell inside a plant pot on the subway. A plant pot. On the subway. Who puts a plant pot there? She laughed nervously. Anyway, technology and I have a complicated relationship. 2019. He turned his head slightly toward her, not directly but enough to show he was listening, paying attention. 15. 14. You're quiet. The words slipped out before her filter worked. Like, really? But in a kind of she searched for the right word, intentional way, as if every word costs something valuable and you only spend it when it's worth it. 10, 9, 8. He went completely still. And then, so softly it almost got lost in the elevator's hum. Yes, one word. But the way it came out like a confession, raw and true, made Elodie's heart race. Ding. 10th floor. The doors opened, and she stepped out, turning just long enough to see him still standing there, facing forward, jaw tight. Have a good day, Mr. Vale. The doors closed before he could answer. Elodie walked into conference room B, out of breath, hair stuck to her forehead from running. 5 executives in gray suits sat around a glass table. Mr. Castellanos at the head, mid-50s, bald, thick-framed glasses. Miss Carter. He looked at the large watch on his wrist. Punctual, impressive for someone new. Thank you, sir. Elodie smiled, setting the folder in front of him. Quarterly financial reports as requested. She left before anyone could open it and find out if it was correct. She went back up to the 42nd floor. It was 9:47 now. Adrian had a call at 10. She had 13 minutes. His office was empty. Perfect. Elodie stepped in quickly, placed the folder in the center of his spotless glass desk, and was almost at the door when she heard. Miss Carter? She froze, turning slowly. Adrian had come through the side door, the one that connected to a private office she hadn't even known existed, and was looking at the folder. Then at her, then back at the folder. This is... He began, voice still rough but with something different in it. Something like confusion? Financial reports. Elodie's stomach dropped like an elevator with a cut cable. What? No. That's... She stepped closer, grabbed the folder, opened it. Numbers. Charts. Quarterly projections. Finance. Oh no, the color drained from her face. No, switch them. Left and right. Castellanos and Adrian. Reports and contracts. Switched. Her voice cracked. Mr. Castellanos has the contracts, the confidential legal documents, and she checked the clock, in a meeting right now with the entire operations board, and she was going to be fired. Worse. Soon worse. Fired and sued. I'm sorry. The words came out in a strangled whisper. I'll fix it. I'll go down and get them back, and... Wait. Adrian raised a hand. She froze. He picked up the phone on his desk, pressed a button. Henderson, the Pacifica contracts, already here? Yes, thank you. He hung up, looked at Elodie. Already, fixed it. She blinked. Processing. You, what? I saw it when you got in the elevator. He spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. Folders switched, and you? Elodie could barely breathe. Fixed it? How? Called Henderson. He shrugged, tiny, almost invisible. She swapped them before the meeting started. Absolute silence. Why? The question came out small, fragile. Something flickered in his gray eyes, something dangerously close to concern. Everyone makes mistakes. Long pause. In the beginning. Then he turned toward the window, hands in his pockets, conversation over. But Elodie stood there for another 5 seconds, heart beating strangely, trying to understand. Adrian Vale had protected her. Again. At 11:47, Elodie was locked in the 42nd floor ladies' room, sitting on the cold marble floor, clutching the digital recorder with trembling hands. Day 2. Her voice was shaky. I mixed up confidential documents, called Mrs. Henderson, Mrs. Harrison 4 times, froze my own computer trying to open an email, and, she sniffled, almost ruined a $1 million deal, paused to wipe the corner of her eye. But her voice broke. He protected me. Adrian protected me, and I don't know why. Silence. You can do this, Elodie whispered to herself. You always can. Don't give up. You never give up. She turned off the recorder and sat there for another minute, pulling her armor back together before returning to the battlefield. That night, sitting on her bed surrounded by colorful sticky notes, Elodie added a new one to the wall. Why is he protecting me? And for the first time, a different answer crossed her mind. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the only one in that building desperately trying not to fall apart. But the next day, Elodie would find out that Adrian Vale had his own secrets, and some of them made sense. On the 3rd day, Elodie Carter decided that Adrian Vale needed help. Not professional help, though probably that too. but her help. Because it was obvious to anyone with working eyes that the man had things to say, but the words got stuck somewhere between his brain and his mouth. And Elodie, who forgot her own birthday but remembered random details about strangers, had noticed patterns. When Adrian agreed, his left eyebrow lifted slightly. When he disagreed, his jaw tightened on the right side. When he was irritated, his fingers tapped once, just once, on the table. When he was something she hadn't quite decoded yet, he looked out the window and his breathing changed. It was like emotional Morse code. And she was going to figure it out. So, Elodie walked into his office at 9:15, holding a tray of coffee, without spilling, "Thank you, universe," set it on the desk, and declared with confidence she absolutely did not feel, "I have an idea." Adrian was sitting behind the desk, reading something on his tablet. He looked up, waited. Silence. "A good idea," she added quickly. "Like, productive, professional." He tilted his head slightly. The gesture said, "Go on." "Okay, so." Elodie pulled out the chair across from him. He hadn't said she could sit, but he hadn't said she couldn't either, technically a gray area, and sat down. "I realize that you, well, talk, just not with words. You talk with," she gestured vaguely toward him. "You, your face, your eyes, your hands, it's all communication, just on a different frequency." His eyebrow lifted. "Interesting. Elaborate." "And I thought," Elodie was excited now, talking with her hands like a conductor leading an orchestra. "What if we create a system? Like signals, for when you don't want to talk but need to communicate something fast during meetings, like our own language, corporate Morse code." Absolute silence. He blinked once, slowly. "I know it sounds ridiculous," she rushed to say before she lost her nerve. "But think about it. You already do this naturally. I'll just learn to read it better. It'll be like being a simultaneous translator, but for you, to you. Does that make sense?" Adrian set the tablet down, slowly, folded his hands in front of his mouth as if praying or planning how to fire her without sounding rude. And then, he did something completely unexpected. He pointed to his left eye. Elodie's eyes widened. Is that a yes? You're saying yes?" He pointed again, then pointed at her. "Left eye means yes," she said, nearly bouncing in her chair. "And right eye means no?" He pointed to the right eye. "That's brilliant!" Elodie clapped her hands like an overexcited seal. Okay, what else? Like, what if you need me to leave the room fast during an awkward meeting?" Adrian thought for a second, then ran a hand through his hair. "Hand in the hair. Got it." She was taking mental notes and also literally writing them on her palm with a blue pen. "And if you need coffee urgently because the meeting is unbearable?" He tapped his fingers on the desk twice. 2 taps. Coffee. Perfect. Elodie grinned so wide it made her cheeks hurt. This is officially the coolest thing I've ever done at work." The corner of his mouth twitched, and for the first time, Elodie noticed something important. He was amused. Adrian Vale, the billionaire CEO famous for being an emotional marble statue, was amused by her. "What?" she asked, smiling now too. "Did I say something funny?" He shook his head. "No." But his eyes said something else. They said, "You're funny. You, just existing, are funny." And strangely, Elodie didn't feel offended. She felt seen. 2 hours later, she was testing the system in real time. Adrian had a meeting with 3 Japanese investors. Elodie sat quietly in the corner of the room like a decorative object, pretending to organize documents while actually studying every micro-expression on his face. The main investor, Mr. Takahashi, in his early 60s, wearing a flawless suit, was talking about growth projections in the Asian market. Adrian listened, still, focused. And then, hand through his hair. Elodie stood up immediately. "Excuse me, gentlemen." She smiled politely. "I need Mr. Vale for a moment. Urgent. 30 seconds. The 3 investors looked at Adrian for confirmation. He nodded once. They stepped into the hallway. "What happened?" Elodie whispered as soon as the door closed. "Was Takahashi being too pushy? Do you need an excuse to end the meeting early?" Adrian looked at her as if she were a fascinating alien. Then he pointed to his left eye. "Yes. Okay, I'll make up an excuse." She was already thinking. "Important call? Emergency? Forgotten appointment?" He raised 2 fingers. "Second option. Emergency. Got it." Elodie nodded confidently. "Go back in. In 3 minutes, I'll knock on the door and say there's an urgent situation that needs your immediate attention. You follow me. I'll improvise. Trust me." He stayed there for a moment too long, looking at her in a way that made something strange happen in her stomach. Then, so low it almost vanished in the air, he tried to say, "Con." The word stuck. Visible. Painful. "Con." His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed, his hands closed into fists. Elodie saw it all. The effort, the frustration, the shame. "Hey," she touched his arm without thinking, softly. "Just reassurance. You don't have to, I already know." He looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face, and something broke behind those storm-gray eyes, something that looked dangerously close to relief. 3 minutes later, Elodie opened the meeting room door with a professional look of concern. "Mr. Val? Sorry to interrupt. Urgent situation with the Los Angeles office. Needs your attention right now." Adrian stood up immediately, gave a polite gesture of apology to the investors, and left the room. They stood in the empty hallway. "They'll reschedule," Elodie explained quietly. "I already spoke with Henderson. She'll call pretending to be the assistant from the California office and confirm the emergency. Your reputation is intact." Adrian looked at her like he was solving an impossible equation, and then he did something that stole the air from her lungs. He smiled, not big, not showy, just a small, corner-of-the-mouth smile that lasted maybe 2 seconds. But it was there. "You," Elodie whispered, pointing at his face like a child seeing magic. "Smiled. You smiled. I saw it. It was real." The smile faded, but his eyes still carried that light. He pointed to his left eye. "Yes, it was real." Elodie felt something warm and unfamiliar spread through her chest. And for the first time since meeting Adrian Vale, she realized she had memorized things about him. Without recording, without writing, just remembered. The way he tilted his head when focused, the tiny pause before speaking, the rhythm of his fingers when he was thinking, the barely visible scar on his right eyebrow. Her heart had stored it, on its own, without help. "Your system works," she said, still processing the discovery. Emotional Morse code, it's working. He nodded, and then with visible effort but even greater determination, he opened his mouth and forced 2 words out. "Thank you." It came out broken, strained, hard to hear, but it came out, and Elodie saw the look that crossed his face right after. Self-loathing, pure frustration over something so simple being so hard. "Hey," she held his arm again, firm this time. "Stop. You did it, you spoke, and I understood. So don't make that face. Please." He looked away, but didn't pull his arm back. And Elodie realized, with terrifying clarity, she was starting to understand Adrian Vale better than she understood herself. And the next day, she would need that understanding, because something was about to happen that would test them both in ways neither of them was ready for. Panic had a smell. Elodie discovered that at 2:37 p.m. on a Thursday, when Mrs. Sear Henderson appeared at the door of the tiny cubicle that served as her office, more like a closet with a computer, wearing an expression that could only mean corporate apocalypse. "Robert Chen is here," Henderson said, the 3 words like a death sentence. Elodie blinked. "Who?" "WHO." Henderson took off her cat-eye glasses, cleaned them with a tissue, and put them back on with ritual patience. "Robert Chen, billionaire investor, technology. Vale Corporation needs him to expand into the Asian market. He's demanding, unpredictable, and he just arrived 3 hours early because his private jet caught a favorable tailwind or whatever." "Okay." Elodie still didn't see the problem. "And Mr. Vale will meet with him, right?" "Mr. Vale is on a conference call with Tokyo that cannot be interrupted," Henderson said, speaking quickly now. "And Chen hates waiting. The last time someone made him wait 15 minutes, he canceled a $50 million investment." Elodie's stomach dropped. "So what do I do?" Henderson looked at her like she was deciding if a 5-year-old could safely defuse a bomb. "You entertain him for 30 minutes. Meeting room C. Coffee, polite conversation, charm, and for heaven's sake, do not say the word wait." "But I don't know anything about him." Elodie was already slipping into panic mode. "I don't even remember what I had for breakfast today. How am I supposed to?" "Improvise," Henderson said, already walking away. "You're good at that." And she was gone, leaving Elodie alone with the impossible mission of entertaining a temperamental billionaire for half an hour, with no preparation, no information, and a memory as reliable as a sieve. "Right." She took 3 deep breaths. "You can do this. It's just conversation. You know how to talk. You talk all the time, sometimes too much. Just," She glanced at her palm where her notes had smudged. Don't mess this up. She picked up the coffee tray Henderson had strategically prepared. The woman was terrifyingly efficient and walked toward meeting room C, trying her best to look confident. Breathe. Posture. Professional smile. She opened the door. Robert Chen sat at the head of the table, mid-50s, perfect navy suit, silver hair slicked back, and an expression that clearly said, "My time is worth more than your entire life." Mr. Chen? Elodie entered with energy she hoped looked professional, not desperate. It's such a pleasure to have you here. I'm Elodie Carter, Mr. Val's executive assistant. He looked at her, scanned her from head to toe in 3 seconds. Didn't look impressed. Val is late. Actually. Elodie set the tray down carefully. You're early. By 3 hours, to be exact. Tailwinds, I heard. Must have been a pleasant flight. Chen raised an eyebrow. You checked my flight? Elodie hadn't checked anything. She was just repeating what Henderson had said. But she smiled like, of course I did. I'm a professional. Mr. Vale is wrapping up a very important conference call with Tokyo, she said, pouring the coffee with movements she had mentally rehearsed 3 times on her way there. He should be done in. She checked an imaginary watch because she'd forgotten to put hers on. Exactly 28 minutes. Chen picked up the cup but didn't drink. Just held it as if testing its temperature, weight, or reality. And you're going to entertain me until then? The way he said entertain made it sound like she was about to perform magic tricks. Well, Elodie sat down across the table. Standing felt too submissive. We could talk about business, technology, or she was improvising shamelessly now. I saw your company just launched a new line of quantum processors. She hadn't seen anything. She was guessing, completely blind. But it worked. Chen leaned forward slightly. You follow quantum hardware development? Who doesn't? Elodie replied with manufactured confidence. It's the future of computing, literally. Silence. Chen studied her with sharp eyes like a scalpel. And then he smiled. Just a little. A corner of the mouth kind of smile. But it was there. You have no idea what you're talking about, do you? Elodie froze. Option A. Lie and make it worse. Option B. Radical honesty. She went with B. She had nothing to lose anyway. Absolutely no idea, she admitted with a nervous laugh. I barely know how to change the Wi-Fi password, but I'm trying to keep you entertained for 27 minutes because my boss is busy, and apparently you cancel multi-million-dollar investments when you get bored. Dead silence. Chen blinked. And then he laughed. A real laugh. Loud. Genuine. At least you're honest, he said, finally drinking the coffee. Refreshing. Most people try to impress me with technical jargon they don't understand. I was going to do that too, Elodie confessed. But I figured you'd notice the moment I started making up words. Chen laughed again. You're different from the other assistants I've met. Is that a compliment? Haven't decided yet. But he was smiling, and for the next 25 minutes, Elodie simply talked. No script, no plan, no memorized information, because she didn't have any, just instinct. Reading the room, reading him. When Chen looked bored, she changed the subject. When he seemed engaged, she followed that thread. When he tested her with technical questions, she admitted her ignorance, with humor. And strangely, it was working. Adrian ended the call with Tokyo and walked toward conference room C, bracing for the worst. Robert Chen was known for 3 things: being a billionaire, being demanding, and being impossible to please. Keeping him waiting was corporate suicide. But when Adrian opened the door, he froze. Chen was laughing? And Elodie was telling some story about how she once froze her grandmother's microwave, gesturing animatedly, and Chen was genuinely amused. Ah, Mr. Vale. Elodie spotted him and jumped from her chair. Perfect timing. We were just talking about things. Chen stood up and extended his hand to Adrian. Vale, your assistant is interesting. Adrian looked at Elodie, searching for translation. She gave a small smile and discreetly raised a thumbs up behind her back. Something in his chest loosened. Adrian began, choosing his words carefully. One of a kind. That's an understatement. She admitted knowing nothing about my company and still managed to keep me more entertained than any boring PowerPoint presentation I've ever seen. Elodie was blushing furiously now. Adrian looked at her. Really looked. And he saw. Not the chaos she seemed to be, not the mistakes she made, but her emotional intelligence, her ability to read people, to adapt. She hadn't remembered facts about Chen, she had felt him. And it worked. If you'll excuse me. Elodie was backing toward the door. I'll leave you to discuss important business matters. It was a pleasure, Mr. Chen. The pleasure was mine, Miss Carter. Chen nodded. Vale, you have good taste in hiring. Elodie left before she could hear the reply. 10 minutes later, she was locked in the ladies' room, sitting on the cold tile floor, hands shaking from post-crisis adrenaline. She grabbed the recorder. Pressed rec. Day 4. Her voice was thick with emotion. I saved $1 million deal, without remembering a single thing, just feeling. And it worked. It worked. She stopped recording and sat there, smiling to herself like a fool, until she heard knocking on the door. Occupied? She called automatically. I know. The voice came from the other side. Elodie froze. It was Adrian. Mr. Vale? She stood quickly and cracked the door open. Is something wrong? He was standing there in the empty hallway, hands in his pockets, looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. And then, he spoke. Not one word. Not two. A full sentence. You saved that meeting, and I don't know how to thank you enough. The words came out slowly, with effort. But they came. Complete sentences. Structured. Direct. Elodie's knees went weak. She could barely breathe. You spoke, like several words in a row. That was almost a paragraph. The corner of his mouth twitched. Try. More words. With you. It's easier. And before she could process what that meant, he turned and walked away, leaving Elodie leaning against the bathroom door, heart racing, mind spinning. With you, it's easier. She memorized that, didn't need to record it. Her heart did the job on its own. But the next day, Elodie would discover that sometimes the heart keeps too much. And forgetting hurts less than remembering. The next morning, day 5, Elodie discovered that her notebook had a mind of its own, and a questionable sense of humor. She was flipping through the pages looking for a note about the 10 a.m. meeting when she found written in her own handwriting. Reminder: Adrian is not a vampire. Stopped staring at his teeth, waiting for fangs. Elodie's eyes widened. I did not write that. She looked around the empty cubicle like she expected a hidden camera. I definitely didn't. She paused, processing. Okay, maybe I thought he has corporate Dracula vibes, but I would never write. She turned the page. P.S. Yes, you did, yesterday. At 2:37 p.m., you were tired. Signed, you from the past. I have written conversations with myself now? She laughed, half hysterical. That's a new level of mental chaos. Congratulations, Elodie. You've evolved. She kept flipping and found more gems. Coffee, no sugar. He likes it bitter, like his soul. Henderson, scary but fair, like Meryl Streep in The Devil Wears Prada. Marcus, will avoid, obvious reasons. And then the last note on the page, Mom's birthday dinner 7 p.m. Friday today. Her stomach dropped. She looked at the computer clock. 6:53 p.m. Oh no. She grabbed her phone, frantically checking it. 17 missed calls. No. Elodie dialed back, her hands trembling. It rang 4 times. Elodie? Her mother's voice was controlled. Too controlled. The kind of voice people use when they're hurt but trying not to show it. Mom! Elodie almost shouted. I'm so sorry. I know there's no excuse. I set a reminder but still forgot, and I'm terrible. And breathe, sweetheart. Her wasn't anger. It was resignation. I already expected it. And that hurt even more. No, don't say that. Elodie's voice came out small. I'll make it up to you. I swear. Tomorrow, Elodie. Her mother interrupted gently. It's okay. I understand. I know how your situation is. You don't need to blame yourself. But the tears were already falling because it wasn't okay. Not when your own mother had already expected to be forgotten. I love you, Elodie whispered. And I'll remember. Next time, I promise. I know, dear. Rest. I love you too. The call ended. Elodie sat there, staring at the phone, feeling the familiar weight of one more thing she had messed up. That's when she heard the voice. Elodie? She looked up and saw Adrian standing at the cubicle door, flawless suit even at 7 p.m., holding a folder, watching her with that unreadable expression. Mr. Vale. Elodie quickly wiped her face, trying to look professional. Hi, you're still here at 7 p.m. That's dedication, workaholic, lack of healthy hobbies? He took a step inside, looked at her phone, then at her face, then back at the phone. And then with that low voice she was starting to recognize even in her dreams. What happened? 2 words. But the way he asked, It wasn't polite curiosity from a boss. It was genuine concern. Elodie took a deep breath, trying to pull herself together. I forgot my mom's birthday, and before you say something kind like it's not your fault, let me tell you, I set the reminder. It's right here. She showed him her notebook. I just forgot to look at the reminder. So technically it's like layered failure. Like a cake. A failure cake with disappointment frosting and whipped incompetence on top. The corner of his mouth twitched. That's not funny. But she was laughing too now, that nervous, wet kind of laugh. I'm a complete disaster. Multidimensional. I should be studied scientifically. Adrian stepped fully into the cubicle, which was tiny, so now they were maybe 2 feet apart, pulled her chair back and motioned for her to sit. Elodie obeyed, confused. Are you firing me sitting down? She asked. Is it more humane that way, like a comfortable position for bad news? He pointed to his right eye. No. Then he picked up her notebook from the desk, flipped through it, and the corner of his mouth twitched again. Corporate vampire? He read softly. Her face went up in flames. I did not authorize you to read that. She tried to grab it, but he held it higher, still reading with an expression like he had just found a hilarious archaeological treasure. Bitter soul? He raised an eyebrow. Stop. Elodie was frozen but also laughing. Those are private notes, like a diary. You can't just corporate Dracula. He was definitely holding back laughter now. Why? Okay, technically you give off the vibe. She defended, finally snatching the notebook back. Like mysterious, appears out of nowhere without making a sound, always in black. I've never seen you eat, so who knows? I eat, he said, amused. Prove it. How? I don't know. Elodie gestured wildly. Take a picture? An eyewitness? Video evidence? Because so far you're like a being that survives on coffee and silence. He was smiling now, small but real. Then he grew serious again, sitting on the other chair, completely invading the tiny space, looking at her with something that felt deeply understanding. I forget things too, he said quietly. When I was a kid, I used to forget words in the middle of sentences. Teachers thought I was, he paused, jaw tightening, slow. Her laugh caught in her throat. But you're not, no, he nodded. But it took years to believe that, years to understand that my brain works differently. Not wrong, just different. Elodie felt something tighten in her chest. You researched me. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. He went very still. How do you know? I didn't, she admitted. But now I do, because you understand too much, and no one understands like that without researching. Silence. Then, yes, he confessed softly. I did. Why? Because. Adrian searched for words carefully. I wanted to help, without offending you, without making you feel broken. And that did it. The tears came back, but this time they were different, not from pain, from being seen. Really seen. Thank you. Elodie whispered. They stayed like that, in shared silence, 2 functional disasters trying to exist on the same planet. The next day, Elodie arrived early, 6:45, a personal record, determined to make up for the emotional collapse by being the model employee. She was organizing documents in Adrian's office when she saw it. A piece of paper, half folded, slightly sticking out from under his mousepad. It wasn't her business, obviously, totally an invasion of privacy to look. But something was written on it, and she could see it even from a distance. Fragile memory, causes and treatments. Elodie froze, looked around. Empty office, empty hallway. She picked up the paper with trembling hands. It was printed from a medical website with handwritten notes in the margins. His handwriting, angular, controlled, beautiful in an almost irritating way. Highlighted lines over short-term memory loss, compensation strategies, emotional support needed. And in the lower corner, handwritten, understand better, help without offending. Her heart stopped. Adrian had been researching about her condition, not out of morbid curiosity, but because he wanted to help. Elodie stood there for a full minute, holding the paper, processing it. And then she did something completely inappropriate. She grabbed a pen from his desk and added at the bottom, P.S. Thank you for caring. And you are not a vampire. Probably. 70% sure. EC. She put it back exactly where it was, walked out of the office, and leaned against the hallway wall like she had just run a marathon. I just wrote a note on my boss's research paper, she whispered to herself. Like, we're 12, passing notes in class. This is, she laughed softly, adorable? Embarrassing? Both? But she couldn't stop smiling. That night, in her apartment, surrounded by sticky notes, Elodie held the recorder. Day 5, her voice shaky but happy. I forgot my mom. I disappointed someone I love. But then, Adrian showed up, and he understands. He looked me up to help, to make sure I don't feel broken. A long pause. And I left a note on his paper, a ridiculous note, about vampires, because apparently when I'm nervous, I'm 12 years old emotionally. She laughed. But you know what's crazy? I don't regret it, because for the first time, I don't feel alone in this. She added a new sticky note to the wall. Adrian researched about me. I called him a vampire. Balanced. Don't forget. And for the first time in a long while, Elodie fell asleep, feeling that maybe, just maybe, mistakes weren't the end of the world. They were just human. But the next day she would find out that being human in the corporate world came at a price, and Adrian would pay it for her. Monday began with Elodie spilling a glass of water on the printer. Not coffee. Water. Because apparently she had evolved to new levels of creative chaos. This is technically safer than coffee, right? She looked at the puddle forming under the machine. Water evaporates. Probably, eventually, without causing fire or permanent trauma to the equipment. The printer made a concerning hissing noise. 3 red lights blinked like an apocalyptic Christmas tree, and it shut off. Or not. Elodie sighed, grabbing paper towels. Perfect. Great start to the week. I'm doing spectacularly well. Someone should give me a medal. Category: Creative Destruction of Corporate Property. Doing spectacularly well indeed. The voice came from behind her. Male. Sarcastic. The kind of unpleasant only people who think they're important can achieve. Elodie turned around. Marcus Whitmore was leaning against the hallway wall, wearing a flawless gray suit, blonde hair styled like an expensive shampoo commercial, holding his own cup of coffee, which was, of course, perfectly intact, and wearing that smile of someone who just found an opportunity to feel superior. Marcus was a senior analyst. He'd worked there for 6 years, and from Elodie's very first day, he'd made it clear he considered her presence on the 42nd floor a cosmic joke in bad taste. Mr. Whitmore. Elodie tried to smile professionally. Good morning. I'm already taking care of this. Taking care of it, he repeated, laughing as if he didn't believe her. Like you took care of the swap documents last week? Or how you took care of being late on your first day? Or that time you sent a confidential email to a journalist? Each word was a precisely aimed jab. Elodie felt the blood rush to her face. Those were different situations that... You know what I find fascinating? Marcus stepped closer, hands in his pockets, posture casual but eyes sharp like a knife. How you're still here. Usually Vale fires incompetence within 72 hours. You've been here, what, the 3rd week? 4th? 3rd? Elodie corrected automatically, then regretted it because it sounded defensive. Exactly. He tilted his head, his smile growing. So I keep wondering, you must be very good at something else. The tone made it perfectly clear what he was implying. If you know what I mean. The air left her lungs like a punch to the stomach. I'm good at my job. Yeah? Marcus laughed. Because from where I'm standing, you're a walking disaster with legs who's probably only here because... Whitmore. The voice came from the other end of the hallway. Low. Controlled. Carrying authority that didn't need to shout to be felt. Adrian. He stood there, flawless black suit, briefcase in hand, eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made the hallway temperature drop 5 degrees. Marcus straightened immediately, fake smile still on his face but not nearly as confident now. Mr. Vale, I was just talking to Miss Carter about... My office, Adrian interrupted. It wasn't a request, it was an order, the kind that meant move now or face consequences. Now. Marcus glanced at Elodie, then at Adrian, and something in his face changed. Something that looked like actual fear. Of course, sir. He walked past Elodie without looking, but she heard him mumble under his breath, Lucky you. Adrian stood there a few seconds longer, watching her, checking. Elodie tried to make a small I'm fine gesture, but her hands trembled slightly. He noticed. Of course he did. His jaw tightened. Then he walked into his office and closed the door. Elodie tried to work, tried to focus on emails, reports, anything but the conversation happening behind that heavy wooden door. But her mind filled in imaginary dialogues. Adrian, you're being inappropriate. I was just making an observation. Observation or harassment? With all due respect, sir, she is incompetent. She shook her head, trying to stop it. Henderson appeared beside her like an administrative ninja. You okay? Define okay, Elodie murmured. If okay means functionally breathing, then yes. If it means anything else, then no. Henderson looked at Adrian's closed door, then back at Elodie. What did Whitmore say? Unpleasant things. Elodie didn't want to repeat them. But technically nothing that violates the official code of conduct, so, Elodie. Henderson took off her glasses, cleaned them, put them back on. The ultimate sign of seriousness. What did he say? He implied that I'm only here because, well, she gestured vaguely. You get it. Henderson's lips tightened into a thin line. That extremely unpleasant individual. Elodie almost laughed. Henderson swearing, in her own polite way, was rare and therefore precious. 15 minutes later, the door opened. Marcus walked out, fast, without looking at anyone. His face was red, his fists were clenched, and for the next few days, he never spoke to Elodie again, never even looked her way. He literally treated her like invisible furniture, which was strange, but definitely better than the taunts. 2 hours later, Elodie was in the basement archive looking for old contracts, because Henderson decided she needed to learn the company's history, which sounded suspiciously like educational punishment disguised as a task. She was so focused on reading dusty labels that she didn't hear the door open. Miss Carter. She jumped like a startled cat, dropping 3 folders she had been balancing on her arm. Goodness! Papers flew everywhere like tragic confetti. Mr. Vale, you're like a silent corporate ninja. I need to put a bell on you, like a cat. The corner of his mouth twitched. He crouched down and started picking up papers from the floor with her. Sorry, Elodie muttered, gathering the scattered pages. For this mess, and for, she waved vaguely, existing problematically in your office, and for causing an awkward situation with a senior employee. And for, Elodie? He said her name softly. She stopped picking up papers. Whitmore. Adrian paused, choosing his words. Won't bother you again. What did you say to him? Silence. The truth. That was all he said. Elodie wanted to ask more, but something in his expression told her that conversation was closed. They finished picking up the papers in silence. When they stood, she held the messy pile to her chest like improvised armor. Thank you, she said quietly. For whatever you said, you didn't have to defend me. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Yes, he said slowly. Why? He opened his mouth, closed it, froze visibly. Elodie saw the effort. The word stuck somewhere between his mind and his mouth. The frustration in his eyes. Hey, she touched his arm lightly. You don't have to explain. I understand anyway. But he shook his head. Like, no, you don't understand, but I need you to. He took a deep breath, tried again. Because you, pause, are not a problem. You are? Another pause, longer. A solution. For me. You make me. And then he completely froze. Elodie waited. No pressure, just there. And then Adrian did something that changed everything. He placed his hand on her shoulder. Light, just support, presence, and said 2 words that changed the universe. She stays. It wasn't for Elodie. It was more like a universal declaration. A statement. An unshakable fact written in the stars. She stays. And then he left. Just left. Leaving Elodie alone in the dusty archive room, crumpled papers in her hands, heart racing like she'd just run a marathon, and something warm and vast growing inside her chest that she couldn't quite name. That night, sitting on her bed surrounded by post-its and external drives, Elodie held the recorder with trembling hands. She pressed rec. Day. Her voice cracked. She took a deep breath and tried again. Day 6. Long pause. Marcus tried to humiliate me, make me feel small, useless. Like I didn't deserve to take up space, and I almost believed him. Almost let those words sink in and stay. Silence. But then Adrian, tears now, he put his hand on my shoulder and said, she stays. 2 words. Just 2. But the way he said it, she sniffled. It was like the entire universe shifted. Like gravity reversed. Like someone saying you matter without needing to use those words. She wiped her face. Today I didn't fade, Elodie whispered into the recorder. Today, I wasn't forgotten, or ignored, or treated like less. Today I was seen, really seen, and defended and protected. Long pause. And it was the most important thing anyone's ever done for me. She turned off the recorder, stuck a new post-it on the wall, written in large firm letters. He said she stays. I was seeing, never forget that, never. And for the first time she could remember, Elodie fell asleep feeling that maybe, just maybe, she belonged somewhere. And that place was next to someone who truly saw her. But tomorrow she would discover that belonging and deserving were two very different things. And one huge mistake was about to test whether Adrian still believed she should stay. The email was sent at 9:42 a.m. on a Tuesday to the wrong person, with the wrong attachment, containing highly confidential information about an acquisition that wasn't supposed to be public until Friday, and Elodie only noticed at 9:58. No, she stared at the computer screen like it was a portal to pure chaos. No, this cannot be happening. Please tell me I'm hallucinating, or dreaming, or having a temporary psychotic episode. But the sent email was right there, blinking, accusing, painfully real. To james.rodriguez@forbes.com. Subject: confidential acquisition. Do not publish before Friday attachment. Confidential financial report, valcorp.pdf. I put do not publish in the subject. Elodie practically shouted at the monitor. That counts as a legal disclaimer, right? An official request. A verbal contract in writing? She checked her contacts list frantically. James Rodriguez, Forbes, james.rodriguez@forbes.com. James Richardson, internal analyst, james.richardson@valcorp.com. They have the same name. She gestured wildly at the unfair universe. Who thought two Jameses with last names starting with R was a good idea? Who? H.O. did this. Her cubicle door practically exploded open. Henderson was there without her glasses, a level 10 apocalypse sign, holding the phone like she was about to call emergency services or an exorcist. Tell me, Henderson said in an unnervingly calm voice. Tell me you didn't do what just triggered an alert on my security system. I can. Explain? Elodie tried, voice trembling like a scared mouse. The board of directors has called an emergency meeting. Henderson was pale, very pale. Now, main conference room, all directors, and they are, she paused, searching for the right word. Furious would be an understatement. Elodie's stomach turned to liquid concrete. I can fix this. I'll call James. I'll explain it was a mistake. I'll beg. I'll offer my firstborn. You will stay quiet. Henderson interrupted, not cruelly, but with the terror of someone who knew exactly how bad this was. And you will let Mr. Vale handle it. Understand? But it was my fault. Exactly. Henderson gripped her shoulders, forcing eye contact. And if you walk into that room trying to defend yourself without a strategy, you'll make it worse. They'll tear you apart. Chew you up, spit you out, and Mr. Vale along with you. So you'll go in there, stand in the corner like a decorative plant, and let him manage the situation. Understood? Elodie nodded like a broken-neck doll. Good, let's go. The main conference room looked like the set of a corporate inquisition. A massive glass table, black leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing all of Manhattan like a silent jury watching, and 7 directors seated in a semicircle, looking ready to sentence someone to professional extinction. Adrian stood at the head of the table, hands in his pockets, expression controlled, like a marble mask. Elodie walked in and went straight to the farthest corner, trying to blend into the wall. So, Mr. Vale. Director Miller, around 60, bald, gold-rimmed glasses, voice like a judge delivering a sentence. Your assistant leaked confidential information to the financial press. Information that, if published before the official announcement, could cost the company millions in market value. Heavy silence. Do you have anything to say? Added Director Walsh, mid-50s, gray hair pulled into a strict bun like a military school teacher. All eyes turned to Adrian. He didn't move. But Elodie noticed. His breathing had changed. Faster. Barely noticeable, but it had. He was about to freeze. She knew it. Sir, I can explain. Elodie jumped up before she could stop herself, words spilling out like a runaway train. It was my fault. Completely, totally, absolutely my fault. I mixed up the contacts in the system because their names are similar, and I was in a hurry and I didn't double-check, and no one asked for your opinion, Miss Carter. Walsh cut her off with surgical precision. But it's important for you to know that Mr. Vale had nothing to do. Incompetence. Miller finished, like he was kindly supplying the missing word. That's what you're looking for, isn't it? Because that's the one we're using. Monumental incompetence. Elodie's face burned. Yes, it was my incompetence, and Mr. Vale shouldn't be blamed. He's at fault for hiring you. Walsh leaned forward like a predator spotting prey. And for keeping you after, how many incidents so far? Let me see. She checked her tablet as if reading from a resume of disasters. Coffee spill on the first day, swapped documents, broken printer, late for an important meeting, and now this. 7. Director Harrison, 50s, gray hair, round glasses, added helpfully as if providing a useful statistic. 7 incidents in 3 weeks. That's almost a record. It is a record. Another director, Chen, confirmed. I checked. Elodie wanted the floor to open up, swallow her, and teleport her to another dimension where she didn't exist. So my question, Mr. Vell, Miller clasped his hands like a man about to deliver a final verdict, is very simple. Why is she still here? Silence. Adrian hadn't spoken yet. Not a single word, not even a sound. His jaw was tight, his fingers hidden in his pockets, probably clenched into fists. His breathing uneven. He was about to shut down. Elodie knew it for sure, and if he froze in front of the entire board, they'd question him, doubt his ability, use it against him. No, she wasn't going to let that happen. Because he's too kind, Elodie blurted out, her voice louder than intended, echoing through the room like a shout in a cathedral. Okay, that's why. He's an incredible CEO and a visionary leader and all those impressive corporate things you probably already know, but he's also good, like, as a person. Everyone looked at her like she'd grown a second head with a third eye. And he gave me chances I clearly didn't deserve, but am extremely grateful for. And if you want to fire someone, fire me, right now. I'll sign the papers, but don't blame him for trying to see potential in a walking disaster with legs. Miller blinked slowly, like he was trying to process whether that was a defense or a confession. Besides, Elodie went on, switching to full creative panic mode. I already contacted James Rodriguez, personally, by phone, 3 minutes after realizing the mistake. I explained the entire situation. He's a professional, ethical journalist and agreed not to publish anything before Friday. So technically, there was no actual leak. There was a near leak, like Schrödinger's leak. It exists and doesn't exist at the same time until an outside observer confirms publication. Quantum physics applied to corporate public relations. Absolute silence, the kind where you can hear dust falling. Miller removed his glasses, cleaned them, put them back on. The ritual of, I'm dealing with madness. Are you? He paused, clearly doubting his own sanity, using quantum physics as a legal defense in a board meeting? I'm using everything I've got. Elodie admitted with brutal honesty, which technically isn't much. It includes questionable creativity, pure desperation, and a shallow understanding of science. I learned from a documentary at 2 a.m. Harrison let out a laugh, small, suppressed, but real. He murmured to Walsh, definitely one of a kind. One of a kind is a generous understatement. Walsh replied, though her tone was less sharp now. Chen was openly smiling now. Quantum physics. He repeated it like he was savoring the absurdity. That's a new one. And then Adrian spoke. She stays. 2 words, again. The same ones. But this time, in front of the entire board, in an emergency meeting, with his own reputation on the line. Miller raised an eyebrow like he was waiting for an explanation. Mr. Vale, with all due respect, you need to consider. No, Adrian interrupted, then continued, forcing out every word with visible effort but unshakable resolve. She makes mistakes. Yes, many, but she also saved the meeting with Chen when I couldn't be there. She created a communication system that works. And he looked straight at Elodie, his gray eyes intense. She makes me want to be better, talk more, try harder. The air left her lungs like someone had punched her. Adrian, she whispered. He looked away quickly, as if he had said too much, revealed too much, shown a vulnerability he usually kept locked up. Miller exchanged meaningful looks with Walsh, Walsh with Harrison, Harrison with Chen. Silent communication among powerful people making collective decisions. Very well. Miller finally sighed like he was giving in against his better judgment. She stays, for now, with an extended probationary period. But, Miss Carter? He looked at her with maximum severity. The next mistake of this magnitude, and there will be no third chance. No discussion, no quantum physics to save you. Understood? Perfectly understood, sir. Elodie nodded vigorously like one of those bobblehead dolls. No more leaks, quantum or classical. A solemn promise. Meeting adjourned. Walsh stood up, grabbing his tablet. Mr. Vale, we need to discuss damage control strategy with the PR department. The directors left, one by one, a silent line of corporate power, leaving only Adrian and Elodie in the huge room. She stood there, trembling slightly like a leaf in front of a fan, trying to process what had just happened. You, she began, her voice small. You chose to protect me, even knowing it would affect how they see you, even risking your own image. Adrian didn't answer. He just kept looking out the window, hands in his pockets, posture tense like he was holding something heavy. Why? Elodie asked, genuinely confused. I'm not worth that. I'm a disaster. You could have the perfect assistant, efficient, one who doesn't break things. A long silence. Then, because you make me remember. His voice came out rough, heavy with something deep. That making mistakes doesn't mean being broken. That trying, even when failing, is worth more than empty perfection. And before she could respond, process, react, he walked out of the room, leaving Elodie alone with the absolute, terrifying certainty that something between them had completely changed, and that she was starting to feel things she didn't know how to name. Things the heart keeps, even when the mind forgets. And the next day, she would wake up remembering everything, for the first time. No recordings, just remembering. And it would be as frightening as it was wonderful. Elodie woke up and remembered. Everything. She didn't need to grab the recorder on her nightstand. She didn't need to review the post-its stuck all over the wall like a chaotic survival mosaic. She didn't need to check the palm of her hand, where she always scribbled important things in blue pen. She just remembered. The board, Miller and Walsh, like a stern jury. The quantum physics she had used as her defense. Seriously, Elodie? Adrian saying she stays in front of everyone. The way his voice had turned rough when he said, you make me remember that making mistakes doesn't mean being broken. It was all there. Intact, vivid, complete. She sat up in bed, heart racing, staring at her own hands like they were alien or had developed superpowers overnight. I remember, she whispered into the empty room. I woke up and I remember everything. She tested it mentally, like a scientist running an experiment. Yesterday's breakfast, toast with strawberry jam, not peanut butter, it was gone. The disastrous email, sent at 9:42 to James Rodriguez from Forbes. Adrian's tie color, navy blue with subtle gray stripes that made his eyes look even lighter. The way he had looked at her when he said those words in front of the board. All there, complete. No gaps, no fog, no missing 30%. Okay. Elodie took a deep breath, processing this discovery like she was uncovering a new law of physics. This is definitely good. This is like a small but significant neurological miracle. Or maybe I'm dreaming. She pinched herself hard. Oh, okay, not dreaming. So she looked at the recorder, still turned off. Out of habit, she picked it up, pressed play. Her own voice played, recorded the night before, trembling with emotion. Day 7. I almost ruined everything. Again, worse than before. But he protected me, in front of everyone. And I think I'm starting to feel things I can't name. Big things. Scary things. What if I forget? What if I wake up tomorrow and it's all faded? But it hadn't faded. It was all still there. Every word, every look, every micro-expression on his face. My brain decided to cooperate, Elodie said to herself, smiling like an idiot. For the second time. Is this like a trend? A pattern? Did my heart finally convince my brain to keep the important stuff? She stood up, went to the wall covered in sticky notes and read, he said, she stays. She remembered perfectly. Quantum physics saved my job. She remembered that too, and was now cringing retrospectively. Adrian makes me want to be better. Wait, had she written that? She checked the handwriting. It was hers. From before. But she remembered writing it now. For the first time in years, she had woken up and the previous day hadn't faded at all. And for the first time, Elodie wondered if maybe, just maybe, her heart had decided that some things were too important to let go. She arrived at the office at 8:03, 27 minutes early, a historic record, smiling like she just won the lottery. Henderson looked at her over the top of her red cat-eye glasses. You're unusually radiant for someone who almost got fired yesterday. I remember, Elodie practically danced up to the counter. Yesterday, the whole day, no reviewing recordings, no reading notes, just remembering like a normal person. Henderson blinked. That's good. It's amazing. Elodie was gesturing wildly, like a conductor leading an invisible orchestra. You don't understand. Normally I wake up and 30% of the previous day is like fog. Smoke. That thing you know existed but can't quite touch. But today, total clarity, full HD, 4K. It's like having a superpower. Fascinating. Henderson didn't sound fascinated, but there was the faintest hint of a smile. Maybe use this new superpower to double-check email recipients before sending. Fair. Totally fair. Deserved. I'll tattoo that on my forehead. Check. Recipient. Always. Please don't tattoo your forehead. It was a metaphor. With you I can never tell, Henderson murmured, still smiling. Elodie floated up to the 42nd floor, her shoes making cheerful little sounds on the marble floor. The left one still squeaked, but today even that sounded like music. And when she entered Adrian's office with breakfast, no spills, 4-day streak she was evolving, he was in his usual position, standing in front of the huge windows, hands in his pockets, watching Manhattan wake up like a silent king surveying his kingdom. Good morning. Elodie set the tray on the desk with careful precision. Black coffee, because you like it that way, even though I think it's a violation of human rights. 2 Italian cookies. And I remembered you don't like them too close to the cup because the steam softens them, so I put them on the other side of the saucer. Adrian turned, slowly, and looked at her like he was solving an impossible equation. The words came out carefully, but he was speaking more, trying more. Different today. I remember. She smiled so wide it hurt her cheeks. Yesterday. Everything. Every word. Every moment. Your face when you said those things to the board, the way Miller took off his glasses like a patience ritual. Harrison laughing at my quantum physics. Everything. Something flickered across his face. Something soft, surprised, almost hopeful. He searched for the word, that careful process she was starting to love. Amazing. I know. Elodie was practically bouncing. I know it sounds small to most people, like, wow, you remember yesterday. But for me, it's like winning the neurological lottery. It's like my brain finally decided to do its job. Adrian took a step closer. Just one. But now they were nearer. Why? He asked quietly. Why did it work today? Elodie thought, really thought. I think, she began slowly, that maybe the heart decides. You know? Like, some things are too important, so the brain doesn't have a choice. It has to keep them. Has to hold on. He was very still, just looking at her with those storm-gray eyes that now had something different in them. Something softer, more open. I understand, he said, completely, and for the first time Elodie realized they were actually talking, for real, full sentences, from him, comfortable pauses between them. No tension, no fear. You're talking more, she said, smiling. Like, full sentences, almost paragraphs. She searched for the right word. Huge. The corner of his mouth twitched. You make it seem easy, he admitted. Talking, with you the words come easier. Elodie felt something warm spread through her chest, like hot chocolate on a cold day. Can I admit something potentially embarrassing? He pointed to his left eye. Yes. Yesterday, when you said those things in front of the board about me making you want to be better. She paused, courage faltering. Yes, he encouraged softly. I kept thinking about it all night. The words came out quickly. Like, everyone sees the silent, intimidating, perfect CEO, but I see you. The person who tries to speak even when it's hard, who protects a disaster of an employee even when it risks his image, who quietly researches memory loss because he wants to help without offending. And she took a deep breath, I really like that person. Like, really, really. Silence. Adrian went completely still, and then he smiled. Not a micro smile, not a twitch, a real smile, full, genuine. It reached his eyes and made them shine like light breaking through clouds. He paused, searching for the right words, like a pink hurricane, destroying my gray world in the best way. Elodie's eyes widened. You just made a poetic metaphor, she practically shouted with joy. A beautiful one, with imagery and everything. I know. He looked as surprised as she was. I don't know where that came from. It was beautiful. Elodie was holding his arm now without realizing it. Like, top 3 of the most beautiful things anyone's ever said to me. Top 3? He raised an eyebrow, amused. What's number 1? When you said she stays, Elodie admitted without a second of hesitation. That was like the entire universe shifting in 2 words. Adrian looked at her for a moment that lasted too long. something intense and vulnerable in his eyes. And then he did something completely unexpected. He laughed. It wasn't loud, not a full laugh. It was soft, almost surprised, rough, as if even he didn't expect that sound to come out. But it was there, real, genuine, his. And Elodie laughed too, at both of them, at the absurdity of it all. The billionaire CEO and the clumsy assistant sharing a genuinely human and sweet moment at 8:30 on a Wednesday morning. They laughed together, and for 5 perfect, precious seconds, they weren't boss and employee. They were just two people who had found something rare, someone who understood. Later, Elodie was filing documents, no mistakes this time, checking everything 3 times, when she realized something terrible. She was afraid, not of losing her job, not of making mistakes, but of forgetting this, the laughter, the way he had looked at her. The pink hurricane metaphor, the feeling of being truly seen. "What if I forget?" she whispered to herself. Hands frozen mid-file. What if I wake up tomorrow and it's all faded? What if things go back to normal and I lose it all again? The door behind her opened quietly. Adrian was there, holding a small piece of paper. "You forgot this." He extended it toward her. "In my office, earlier." It was her post-it, the one he had kept in his drawer weeks ago. Reminder, Adrian equals boss. Don't call him Mr. Serious Cat out loud. "You still have this?" Elodie took it with slightly trembling hands, emotion tightening her throat. "After all this time, I keep," he said simply, "important things." And Elodie understood. He was afraid too, afraid of forgetting, of losing this, of waking up one day and realizing it had only been a dream. "I won't forget," she promised, looking straight into his eyes. "Not this, not you, my heart. It kept it, and it won't let it fade." Adrian stood there for a long moment, then so softly it almost disappeared into the air. "Mine, too." And when he left, Elodie stood there holding the old, wrinkled post-it, smiling like a fool, knowing something precious was happening, something even the weakest memory in the world could never erase. That night, recording. Day 8. I woke up remembering everything, and we laughed together. For real. And he said I'm a pink hurricane destroying his gray world in a better way. And long pause. I think I'm in love. Actually not think, I know. And it's terrifying and wonderful and... She turned off the recorder, stuck a new post-it on the wall. We laughed together. He made a metaphor. My heart kept everything. And for the first time, Elodie wasn't afraid of forgetting. Because some things, the heart keeps forever. But the next day, her fear would become real. And Adrian would learn that some memories hurt too much to fade. Elodie woke up and the world was blurry. Not literally. Her eyes worked perfectly. Vision was 20/20. But something was missing. Like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. She reached for the recorder automatically, pressing play with fingers that were already trembling a little. Her own voice came through from the night before. Too cheerful, too hopeful. Day 8, I woke up remembering everything, and we laughed together. For real. And he said I'm a pink hurricane destroying his gray world. Elodie paused the recording. Pink hurricane? She searched her memory, dug through mental files, reached deep. Nothing. She remembered going to work, vaguely remembered a coffee tray, remembered that something good had happened, but the details were like a photograph left out in the sun. Faded outlines, color drained away. No, she looked at the recorder like it had betrayed her. No. Yesterday was good. Yesterday I remembered everything. How can I forget today? But she knew how. She understood the cruel science behind it. She had slept poorly. A bizarre nightmare about drowning in paperwork while printers laughed at her. Woke up 3 times sweating. A stressed brain doesn't consolidate memories properly. Basic biology, inevitable, unfair. She checked the post-its on the wall, desperate for clues. He said she stays. Okay, she remembered that. Barely. Quantum physics saved my job. Oh yes, the email disaster, that she remembered. We laughed together. He made me a metaphor. Nothing. Total blank. A black hole where a precious memory should be. Perfect. Elodie buried her face in her hands, laughing without humor. I forgot the most important moment. Of course I did. Because apparently when I'm happy, my brain decides, nope, too good, let's erase it. It's like internal sabotage. High-level neurological self-sabotage. She got dressed on autopilot, repeating the basic facts she needed to remember. Adrian Vale, CEO, boss, work at 8:30, Coffee without sugar. Don't spill things. Don't send emails to the wrong people. Basic survival. She checked her phone. There was an alarm she didn't remember setting. 8:15, West Coast meeting. Important documents. Do not forget. She looked at the clock. 7:53. Okay. Meeting. Documents. I can do this. She took 3 deep breaths. I will do this. No disasters. Competent employee. Functional version of Elodie. But when she arrived at the office at 8:42, 12 minutes late because the subway was chaos and she'd forgotten her wallet and had to go back, the first thing Henderson said was, "You missed the 8:15 meeting." Elodie froze like a statue of salt. What meeting? Henderson took off her glasses, cleaned them with slow, deliberate movements, put them back on, the ritual of patience being tested to its limit. The meeting Mr. Val scheduled yesterday, with the West Coast investors. You were supposed to be there with the documents prepared. You wrote it down. I saw you write it. Her stomach dropped like an elevator with a cut cable. I wrote it down? Her voice came out small. In your notebook, right in front of me, with 3 exclamation marks after the word important. Elodie grabbed her bag frantically, pulled out her notebook, flipped through it with shaking hands. And there it was, in her own handwriting, 3 exclamation marks. 8:15, West Coast meeting, important documents. But she didn't remember writing it. I forgot, she whispered, like a confession. Completely. Where is he? I need to apologize. I need to explain. Room C. Henderson held her arm, gentle but firm. But Elodie, breathe first. Get your thought understand. But Elodie wasn't sure of that, because forgetting her own mother was one thing, but forgetting an important work meeting, that was career-ending. She walked into room C with the documents, which Henderson had prepared because she was efficient, even when Elodie was a disaster. Apologies tumbling over each other in her throat. Adrian was sitting alone. The meeting was over. The investors were gone, probably annoyed, probably rethinking their partnership. He looked up when she entered, and he saw. She knew it the very second it happened. The way his eyes shifted from neutral to worried, almost afraid. He knew. Just by looking at her, he knew. I'm sorry. Elodie placed the documents on the table with trembling hands. I forgot. I know there's no excuse, but I slept badly, and when I don't sleep well, my brain doesn't consolidate memories properly. It's like a technical failure. Biological. I set an alarm but forgot to check it and… Elodie. He said her name softly like he was holding something fragile. She stopped talking. You, he paused, choosing his words carefully as if walking on glass. Forgot yesterday? Pieces. She admitted, staring at her own hands because she couldn't look at him. I remember some things, but others faded, like they always do when I don't sleep well. Like what? She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes, not even close. I remember the coffee, the printer finally cooperating, you walking into the room. But her breath trembled. You said something about a pink hurricane, and we laughed, and her voice broke. I can't remember. I heard it on the recording, but I can't remember for real. I can't feel it. It's just information. It's not a memory. Something in his face broke just for a second. But it was there. Pain. Raw, pure, deep pain. Like watching something precious slip away and being unable to stop it. Adrian started, his voice rougher than usual, struggling with each word. We laughed. Together. For the first time. For real. And you said… He paused like he was afraid to keep going, afraid to make it real. That I was the most interesting person you ever met. Elodie felt tears sting her eyes, ready to fall. I said that? You did. He confirmed it so softly it almost vanished into the air. And I forgot. She laughed with no humor at all, the sound cracked. Of course I did. The most important, most beautiful moment, and Her voice gave out. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Adrian stood there, looking at her as if watching something precious and fragile fall apart in front of him, knowing there was nothing he could do. It's not your fault. He forced the words out with visible effort. You don't choose to forget. But I hate it. Elodie burst out, tears falling freely now. I hate waking up and realizing I've lost pieces. I hate that my own brain is the enemy. I hate that you said important, beautiful things to me and I can't hold on to them, and you have to repeat them like a teacher with a slow student, and… He stood up, walked over to her, and did something that stole every bit of air from her lungs. He cupped her face in both hands. gentle, careful, like she was made of delicate porcelain. And he spoke, slowly, every word costing effort but coming out with absolute, unshakable determination. Then, I'll say it, again and again, as many times as you need to hear it, until your heart keeps it, even if your mind forgets. Elodie looked at him through the blur of tears. You do that? I already am. He wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb, his touch soft and steady. You make me want to try, always. Even when it's hard, even when the words don't come. You are worth the effort. And for the first time, Elodie truly understood. He was afraid of losing her. Not to another job, not to another city or company, but to forgetting, to the faded pieces she could never get back, to the fog that erased precious moments. I'll remember, she promised, knowing it might be a lie, maybe impossible, but promising anyway. The important things. You. I will. He nodded, but his eyes said something else. They said, what if you can't? What if one day you look at me and don't know who I am? That night, Elodie recorded with a shaky, tear-soaked voice. Day 9, forgot yesterday, important pieces, the best ones. He noticed just by looking at me, and it hurt him, me, both. A long pause, uneven breathing. But he said, he'll say it again, as many times as I need, and her voice cracked completely. I don't deserve that. Don't deserve him. But I want to. So much silence. And what if one day I forget who he is? What if I wake up and he's just a stranger? What if I lose everything? What if... She turned off the recorder, unable to keep going. She stuck a new post-it on the wall with shaky handwriting. Today I failed. But he still stayed. Remember, he doesn't give up on me. And for the first time, Elodie was truly afraid. Not of forgetting facts or appointments, but of forgetting feelings. Of waking up one day and feeling nothing when she looked at Adrian Vale. And that would be worse than being fired. But the next day, Adrian was going to do something that would change everything. Because he had his own secrets, his own fears. And it was time to open the door he had kept locked for years. Elodie arrived at work at 7:58, 2 minutes early. She was crushing it, determined to be the most perfect employee in the history of corporate capitalism. She had checked everything 3 times. Coffee ready, documents organized, strategic post-its placed in visible spots, alarms correctly set. She was basically a well-oiled efficiency machine. She walked into Adrian's office with the tray, confident smile, professional posture. Good morning. Coffee with no sugar, perfect temperature. 2 Italian biscuits placed at the ideal distance to avoid steam moisture. And I also brought the reports you'll need for the... She tripped over absolutely nothing. The coffee didn't spill? Miracle. But she did that windmill arm motion of someone stepping off a roller coaster trying to regain balance. And one of the Italian biscuits flew off the tray like an out-of-control frisbee, crossed the room in a perfect arc, and landed on his head. Adrian was sitting at the desk. The biscuit was now resting on top of his head like a very unusual hat. Total silence. Elodie froze, tray still in her hands, eyes wide. She began. He slowly raised his hand, picked up the biscuit, looked at it, and then laughed. Not a polite laugh, a real one. Almost a full laugh. His shoulders shook. I tried. Elodie blurted out, but now she was laughing too. I really tried to be perfect today. I woke up early, checked everything, and still managed to hit you with an Italian biscuit. Like, is this my signature now? Accidental creativity with cookies? You, he tried to speak between laughs, have a very unique talent. Talent is a generous word. She set the tray down on the desk, taking the biscuit from his hand. I'd call it a questionable gift. He was still smiling, that full smile that completely transformed his face. Then he grew serious. Not abruptly, more like a cloud passing in front of the sun. He paused. I need to talk to you. For real. Not here. Her heart sped up. Is something wrong? Did I do something else? Was the biscuit the last straw now? No, he interrupted gently. Nothing's wrong. It's just important. Can you meet me? On the rooftop, 7 p.m., after work. She nodded, confused but curious. Sure, I'll be there. The rooftop of Val Enterprises was a place Elodie didn't even know existed. Private elevator access. She only managed to use it because Adrian had sent her the code. A garden at the top of the skyscraper, soft lights, and a view of all of Manhattan shining like an urban constellation. It was 7:03 p.m. She was 3 minutes late, progress, and he was already there. Standing near the edge, hands in his pockets, looking down at the city. And for the first time since she'd met Adrian Vale, he looked smaller on the inside. Not physically, but vulnerable, human, even a little nervous. "Hi." Elodie approached slowly. "Sorry, I'm late." The elevator confused me. I almost ended up in the basement. He turned, tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you for coming." "Of course." She stood beside him looking at the view. "This is incredible. I didn't even know it existed." "Few do," he said quietly. "I come here when I need to think." A comfortable silence settled for a few seconds. Then Adrian took a deep breath, like a diver preparing for a long dive. "I need to tell you something. About me. About why I am the way I am." Elodie turned fully toward him, giving him her full attention. "Okay, I'm listening." He opened his mouth, closed it again. His hands in his pockets tightened into fists. "When I was 9 years old," he began, his voice already rough, "there was a science fair. At school, I had chosen to do mine about." Long pause. "Animals, turtles specifically." Elodie nodded, not interrupting, just present. "I memorized everything, every word, every detail, practiced in front of the mirror 50 times. He looked down at his hands. "At first, I was nervous, but the words were in my head, clear, organized, and I managed." A small smile appeared. "Everyone who stopped by, I explained, and it worked. The words came out, right, in the right order. I was happy. For the first time, I didn't freeze." His expression changed. "Until the teacher, Mr. Morrison, brought the principal, and other teachers, more people watching, and they asked me to explain again." But this time his voice faltered. Elodie stepped closer, didn't touch him, just stayed present. I froze. The word came out heavy. In the middle of the first sentence, the word wouldn't come, and the harder I tried, the worse it got. And the teacher said, in front of everyone, "Maybe you aren't prepared enough for this project." And the kids, his voice firm but strained, started mimicking my stuck speech. His breathing turned uneven. His hands trembled slightly. He was fighting now, not with the memory, with the moment. Elodie reached out slowly, took his hand, just held it. Pure presence. He looked at her hand in his, breathed. Tried again. After that, it got harder. Every time I had to speak in front of a lot of people, my body froze. My father would say, "Just talk slower." As if it were that simple. As if I weren't already trying. Heavy silence. Years of professional help, breathing, techniques, and I found out, he looked at her, that when I'm calm, I can do it. The words come out, but when I'm under pressure, it comes back. "That's why the silence," she said, connecting the dots. "It's not a choice, it's protection." "Yes." He looked at her with relief. "Silence is safe." Elodie felt her heart tighten. "But then I showed up," she said softly. "Talking nonstop, pulling you into conversations, pushing you." "No." He held her hand with both of his now. "You make me want to try. Because with you," he searched for the words, "I don't feel afraid to fail. You don't laugh. You wait." Tears rolled down her face now. "I'll always wait," she promised. "As long as it takes." He pulled her closer. A hug. Simple. Meaningful. They stayed like that. Two hearts trying to take care of each other at the top of Manhattan. When they pulled apart, Elodie took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "So, can I do something kind of unusual?" "What?" "I'm going to create a mental label, like one of my internal sticky notes. It'll say, 'Warning, precious human, handle with extra care. Don't rush, don't judge, hugs welcome.'" The corner of his mouth twitched. Mental label?" "Yes, like when a box says fragile, handle with care." "You have yours now." He laughed. Soft, emotional. "You're impossible." "Impossible is my second specialty. First is hitting people with Italian cookies." And there, on the rooftop, under the stubborn stars trying to outshine the city lights, something changed between them. It wasn't said, it wasn't declared, but it was there. He had opened up, she had kept everything safe, and for the first time, neither of them was alone. That night, while recording, day 10, he told me everything. The struggle. The fight to speak. And I, long pause, I'm going to remember this. Every day, even if I have to stick reminders to my pillow. Because this, he, is too important. She added a sticky note. Adrian trusted me. Handle with care, always. When Elodie was almost asleep, her phone buzzed. A message from him. "Thank you for listening, for waiting, for not laughing. A." She typed back. "Always. E." And then 3 dots appeared, disappeared, came back. "Finally, I need to tell you something else. Tomorrow. Something that changed when you arrived." Her heart raced. What else was there to tell? And the next day she would discover that some confessions change everything forever. Adrian's message kept flashing in Elodie's mind all night like a blinking neon sign. I need to tell you something else, tomorrow. She had slept poorly again, woke up at 6:15 reviewing recordings, again, and arrived at the office at 8:12 with extra strong coffee and anxiety at critical levels. Henderson intercepted her in the lobby. Emergency meeting, main conference room, now. Elodie's stomach dropped. What did I do this time? She asked automatically. You? Nothing. Henderson adjusted her glasses in that way that meant brace yourself. The board called it, about you, without Mr. Vale present. That's good? Definitely not. Elodie walked into the main conference room and immediately tripped over her own foot. There was nothing on the floor. Literally nothing. She just tripped over air. She caught herself by grabbing the door, which slammed against the wall with a loud bam, making all 7 board members turn in perfect unison, like a very judgmental Greek chorus. Sorry, she practically shouted. Gravity hates me. It's personal. A physical vendetta. Miller at the head of the table took off his glasses, cleaned them, his ritual of patience. Miss Carter, please, sit. She sat in the farthest chair, trying to blend into the black leather. Let's get straight to the point, Walsh began, voice sharp as a scalpel. We're concerned about the dynamic between you and Mr. Vale. Elodie blinked. Dynamic? He's been protecting you, Chen explained. Constantly. Even when it costs the company, even when it costs his reputation. That's not healthy, Harrison added. For either of you. Miller leaned forward, fingers interlaced. Miss Carter, you seem like a good person. But be honest, are you the best assistant for the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation? The silence that followed was deafening. Elodie began, her voice small. Probably not. Exactly, Walsh nodded, like a teacher pleased that a student had finally understood. Mr. Vale needs someone perfect, efficient without, she gestured vaguely, complications. Someone who doesn't forget meetings, Chen added. Or send confidential emails to journalists, Harrison said. Or knock things over, another director muttered. Elodie felt something heavy settle in her chest. So you want me to resign? We're suggesting? Miller chose his words carefully. That maybe it's for the best, for everyone, including you. With an excellent letter of recommendation, Walsh added, trying to sound kind. And 3 months' pay. Generous. Elodie looked down at her hands. They were right. Adrian deserved better. He deserved an assistant who wasn't a walking disaster. Someone who didn't make him waste his energy protecting her instead of focusing on work. Okay, she said quietly. I'll start preparing my exit. 2 weeks' notice? 1 week would be better, Miller replied. Right, 1 week. Elodie stood, her legs shaky. Can I go? You can. And Miss Carter? Walsh called out as she reached the door. It's the right choice, you'll see. Elodie was in the women's restroom, her official refuge, sitting on the cold floor holding her recorder when the door flew open. Henderson. You didn't sign anything, did you? No, I just agreed verbally. Good, because Mr. Vale found out and he's furious. Like, I've never seen him this angry. He shouldn't be, Elodie said, wiping her face. They're right. I'm not good enough. Are you going to let him decide that? Henderson practically roared, the Henderson version of roaring, meaning slightly raised voice. Or are you going to let 7 men in expensive suits decide your life for you? I just don't want to make things harder for him. Then come. Now. He's waiting. Elodie walked back into the conference room, without tripping this time, progress, and froze. Adrian was standing at the head of the table. The board was seated. All eyes were on him, and he was shaking, slightly. His hands clenched into fists, his breathing controlled but uneven. Mr. Vale, Miller began in a calm tone. Be reasonable. We're thinking about what's best for the company. No. The word came out loud, clear, firm. Everyone froze. Adrian never raised his voice, ever. You're not, he continued, forcing out each word, but steady. You're thinking about numbers, efficiency, perfection that doesn't exist. But there are more qualified assistants. Adrian cut him off, now looking directly at Elodie. She's the one who made me start talking again. After years choosing silence, she made it worth trying. The air left her lungs. Mr. Vale, Walsh tried, but Adrian raised his hand. Not done. He took a deep breath, looked at each board member, then at Elodie, and spoke, a full sentence without stammering. She's the one I could never forget, even on bad days, Even when she forgets, I remember every moment, every smile, every beautiful disaster. And if you make her leave, pause, voice lower but still steady, then I leave too. Absolute silence. Miller blinked like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. You're giving us an ultimatum? I'm giving a choice, Adrian corrected. She stays and I stay. She goes, you'll need a new CEO. Walsh looked at Chen. Chen looked at Harrison. Silent corporate panic communication. Mr. Vale, Miller finally said, this is highly irregular. I don't care, Adrian replied simply. Then he turned to Elodie, walked toward her, and took her hand. You stay? He asked softly, just for her. With me? Elodie looked at him through tears. Always, she whispered. If you still want me. Always have, he admitted, since the day of the cookie at the cafe. And there in front of the entire board of directors in $3,000 suits. Elodie Carter laughed, that wet, joyful, chaotic laugh. And Adrian Vale smiled. But outside the room, someone had heard everything. And happy endings don't always come without a fight. Elodie woke up, and the first thing she did was smile. She didn't reach for the recorder, didn't check the post-its, didn't look at the notes on her palm. She just remembered. Adrian in the conference room, hands shaking but voice steady. She's the one I could never forget. The impossible ultimatum. She stays and I stay. She goes, you'll need a new CEO. The way he had held her hand in front of everyone. Every word, every look, every moment, kept intact, permanent. She sat on the bed, looking at the wall covered in colorful post-its, and for the first time in years, she didn't need them. Her heart had kept everything on its own. 3 months later, on an absurdly sunny Friday morning in New York, Elodie walked into the office carrying 2 cups of coffee, humming something that definitely wasn't a real song. Henderson looked at her over her cat-eye glasses. You're singing. I am, Elodie confirmed cheerfully. Not sure what song. I just made it up. It's about coffee and not tripping. Still working on the lyrics. Fascinating, Henderson murmured, but she was smiling. Mr. Vale is waiting and Miss Carter? Yes. You didn't forget anything today. I know. Elodie practically jumped. 37 days in a row. A new personal record. I'm thinking about making a t-shirt to celebrate. Please don't make a t-shirt. You're funny, you know that? Like, unintentionally. Henderson just pointed to the elevator, but she was smiling. Elodie walked into Adrian's office, without tripping, spilling, or causing any kind of disaster. She was evolving, like a corporate Pokemon, and found him in his usual position, by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at Manhattan. Good morning, Mr. Serious Cat, she announced. He turned, raising an eyebrow. You still call me that? In my head? Always. She placed the coffee on his desk. Out loud? Only when I want to see that face. What face? That one. She pointed at him. The I'm trying not to laugh but I kind of am face. The corner of his mouth twitched. You know me too well. 3 months of intensive study, Elodie said, sitting on the edge of his desk, a not-so-professional position that was now allowed. I could get a PhD in Adrian Vale. Maybe even give lectures. Chapter 1. Why he's probably not a vampire. He laughed. That soft laugh she'd come to love more than any sound in the world. I have news, Adrian said, picking up her coffee instead. Remember I told you I needed to tell you something? Months ago? The mysterious message, Elodie gasped. I remember. You never told me. You were interrupted by that boardroom drama. Exactly. He took a breath. So, here it goes. Dramatic pause. I am in love with you. Have been for months, probably since the cookie incident. Silence. Elodie blinked. You're using a love confession to make a joke about an Italian cookie? I am, he confirmed, smiling fully now. Romantic, right? Ridiculous, she said, laughing through tears. You kept that in for 3 months just for the perfect romantic comedy timing? Totally worth it for the look on your face. I love you too, you impossible man, Elodie practically shouted. Obviously, I record it every night. Day 37, still in love. Day 38, still in love. Day 39. I know, he interrupted gently, taking her hand. I listen to your recordings. Sometimes, when you forget the recorder, in my office, you listen to my recordings. She was mortified and delighted at the same time. How else do you think? I always know when you've forgotten something important. I thought you were psychic. I'm just attentive. He pulled her closer. And in love. Deeply in love. And there, in that office with a view of Manhattan, surrounded by 3 months of survived disasters and stored memories, Adrian Val kissed Elodie Carter. Soft, careful, perfect. When they finally pulled apart, she was smiling like a fool. "I'm going to remember this," she whispered, "forever." "I know." He touched her face. "Your heart doesn't forget what matters." 6 months later, on a rooftop decorated with lights and flowers, the same rooftop where he once told her about his trauma, Adrian knelt down. No elaborate speech, no fancy words. He just looked at her and said, "Will you marry me?" 2 words. But the way he said them, Elodie couldn't even speak. She just nodded furiously, laughing and crying at the same time. "So, that's a yes?" he asked, smiling. "Yes, of course it's yes. You think I'd say no to the man who makes me want to remember everything?" He slid the ring on her finger, simple, elegant, perfect, and pulled her into a hug. "I love you," Adrian said clearly, no hesitation, no fear, completely. "I love you too," Elodie replied, "and I'll remember this, every day, I promise." That night, Elodie recorded one last entry as a ritual. "It's not day anything, it's the day he asked me to marry him, and I said yes, and I'll remember. Not because I recorded it, but because," she paused, emotional. "Love doesn't fade, even when memory does, the heart remembers." She looked at the post-its on the wall, hundreds of them, a rainbow of survival, and placed one last note in the center, in red. "Don't forget, love doesn't fade, ever." Then she grabbed her phone, opened her notes, and typed, "Permanent reminder, Adrian Vale, my fiancé. The man who taught me that making mistakes doesn't mean being broken, who waits when I forget, who speaks even when it's hard, who loves me with all my flaws. Don't forget, he's mine forever." And for the first time, she wasn't afraid to forget. Because some things the heart remembers even when the mind fails. And their love, that was permanent. On Monday morning, Henderson found them in the hallway, Elodie's ring shining, Adrian smiling openly. "So you two are getting married?" "We are," Elodie practically sang. "Finally," Henderson muttered. "I had a bet with the HR team." "You bet on us?" "Obviously. You two were obvious since the day of the Italian cookie." Adrian and Elodie looked at each other and laughed. Because in the end, it wasn't the perfect memory that saved her. It wasn't the perfect speech that saved him. It was the imperfect love that saved them both. And you, which part of your life deserves to be remembered forever? And that's how the story of Elodie Carter and Adrian Vale comes to an end. 2 broken hearts that found healing in each other. A secretary who forgot everything except what truly mattered. A CEO who chose silence until he met someone worth speaking for. And you, what did you think of their journey? Were you rooting for them since the first spilled coffee? Or did you only realize you'd fallen for this story when Adrian said, "She stays"? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know your favorite moment. Was it the Italian cookie hitting his head? The corporate quantum physics? Or that rooftop moment when he finally opened his heart? On a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story? Be honest. Your opinion helps us create even better ones. And if you made it this far, it means you spent more than an hour with us. That deserves recognition. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to receive more touching stories like this one. We're preparing stories filled with romance that defies all odds, comedy that will make you laugh until you cry, drama that will stir your heart, and always, always endings that are worth it. Oh, and one last question before you go. If you were Adrian or Elodie, which quality would you admire most in the other? Her courage to keep trying even while forgetting? Or his patience to wait and protect, always? Share your thoughts below. We love reading your reflections. Thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you for believing that imperfect love can be the most beautiful kind. And thank you for remembering that love never forgets, even when it stumbles over the words. See you in the next story.